remarkable site. Then you can drive slightly northeast to Muskoka. And Muskoka is almost world-renowned. There are a lot of international celebrities even who have cottages there for being able to just enjoy the lake, the swimming, the water skiing. You can take a steamship up the lake called the Seguin. There's great hotels and beautiful resorts. Then you can drive through the Algonquin Park and Samuel de Champlain Park east to the national capital of Ottawa, where there's the Parliament buildings. You can eat beaver tails, which are sort of a unique dessert that they've created that looks like a beaver tail, but really it's sort of a pastry. There are lots of incredible national museums in Ottawa, the Canadian War Museum, over the river in Gatineau, which is in Quebec, but it's one national capital region. There's the Canadian Museum of History, and so on. Then if you drive down towards the St. Lawrence River, there are beautiful Thousand Islands cruises you can do in Gananoque, Rockport, and Kingston. And Kingston is also a beautiful city, and it's also the home of Fort Henry. And one of the other things that we have in the province is Fort Henry in Kingston, Fort York in Toronto, and Fort George near Niagara, if you're a history buff and want to take in the history things. That's sort of a driving tour. You can take a plane from Toronto up to Sault Ste. Marie. This is particularly popular in the fall, during the time when the trees change color. And there's a sort of an excursion you can do called the Agawa Canyon Train in Sault Ste. Marie. It's about 3 hours up and down, and you can see the sights where the group of seven painted some of the most iconic pictures of Ontario. And in the fall, of course, we get enormous volumes of tourists from China and South Korea and all over the world to see the maple red color. In Sault Ste. Marie, there's also a bush plane museum, the Ermitinger Clerg Historical Site, which is sort of like they bake bread in stone ovens and so on. You can also fly to Thunder Bay. I was born in Thunder Bay, actually. It used to be called Port Arthur and Fort William, but it combined to be Thunder Bay. A lot of motorcycle enthusiasts and drivers of cars also like to drive from Sault Ste. Marie to Thunder Bay because you get great views of Lake Superior. Thunder Bay is also very popular at the moment for sailing. They have a Fort William, which is a replica of a fur trading fort that has an Aboriginal group that animates Aboriginal culture right beside it. They do powwows and so on, which are Aboriginal festivals. It'd be quite a good weekend excursion. So if you came to Toronto and did Niagara Falls and wanted to kind of do what else can I do for a couple of days, you could fly up and back. There's an airline called Porter Airlines that flies out of Toronto's Island Airport, and then you can get Air Canada out of Pearson Airport. There's Sudbury, Ontario, which is a huge mining town in the past, which has science centers and so on. But basically, there's lots of, in the south, a lot of small towns that people like to go to because they have historical main streets, kind of like smaller towns, I would think, in England, that are sort of charming, have their own historical sites. Probably what I think is really exciting these days is that we're also becoming very famous for our wines and our craft beers. I think there are 23 craft beer companies in Ottawa at the moment. They're happening in Windsor, they're happening in Toronto, they're happening in Prince Edward County. Prince Edward County is a peninsula that's almost an island, sort of halfway between Kingston and Toronto, where there's an enormous wine growing area, and that is sort of one of three, the other two being in the Niagara region and in the north shore of Lake Erie called Essex Pelly Island. And our wines are becoming quite popular worldwide. And of course, have you heard of ice wine?
I have, yes. I was just going to ask you, is your ice wine better than that in British Columbia?
Our ice wine is the best in the world.
Is it? Okay.
And we did it first.
Yeah, I've never tried it yet, but
well, what I used to do, and I still do, is serve it on top of ice cream. So a lot of people use it as sort of a dessert wine, but I found that it's like maple syrup. You can put ice wine or maple syrup on your vanilla ice cream, and it's outstanding. Whenever I go abroad and I have to go through the airport through duty free, I'm buying maple syrup and ice wine to take to friends wherever they are.
You can follow me on Twitter at holiday_hut. The show this week is focusing on Ontario. We're covering an awful lot of information about why you should visit the province in Canada, and we're going to go straight back into it now with my conversation with Ronald Holgerson, who's from the Ontario Tourism Marketing Partnership. You just said about going in the fall time to see the leaves. Is Ontario, so obviously the fall is the best time to see the trees changing, but is Ontario a year-round destination, or is there seasons you should really go to?
Increasingly year-round. In fact, we're the international visitors who come in the winter are growing exponentially these last couple of years. I think what happens is there's a lot of, like the Rideau Canal in Ottawa becomes the world's longest skating rink. It's quite a remarkable experience. I lived in Ottawa for 11 years, and people skate to work even in the morning, in the winter. There's a new place in Ontario where you can skate among torches, where they're putting up artificial rinks. There's a lot of hockey, obviously. There's sports tourism all year round, hockey in the winter, basketball in the spring. Skiing is popular. We don't have Rocky Mountain kind of skiing. It's more of a family kind of skiing. Dog sledding is popular, so a lot of tourists can come, and there's several companies now where you get to experience dog sledding. Blue Mountain that I mentioned earlier in the winter is quite popular because they offer a whole lot of things at the same time. And when the maple syrup starts flowing in the spring, it's traditional to go to a sort of a maple cabine à sucre, sugar cabin, and pour the maple syrup on snow, which makes it sort of a taffy consistency, and then you can do that. There are increasingly people that are doing winter festivals as well that include both outdoor and indoor concerts. It's a huge festival province. If you Google the site of Festivals and Events Ontario, there's hundreds of festivals all over the province.
Have you ever been in England when it snows?
No, I've only been to England twice, and I've been to London and Sheffield, and it was always actually quite lucky, very sunny, and kind of very comfortable. So, but we love I lived in the Yukon as a kid. Toronto gets snow, and then it gets lake effect snow. And so those people who live slightly east of Georgian Bay around Barrie, Ontario, they can get an awful lot of snow. Now, because of El Nino, we just had a relatively mild winter. There wasn't as much snow, but there's a lot of snow in a winter that is, shall we say, traditional. Northwestern Ontario and Northern Ontario, I should have mentioned, are also popular for fishing, some hunting, outdoor adventures, a lot of kayaking and paddling and canoeing along the rivers and lakes all over the province, motorcycles, power sports, houseboating in Kawartha Lakes. I mean, there's just about anything you could, well, not anything because it's not China or Machu Picchu, but there's an incredible diversity of things to do in Ontario, both urban and non-urban. And one of the things we like to celebrate is that right close to our cities, there's easy access to nature.
Back in England, if we have 5 flakes of snow, we are shut down. We can't do anything. People panic buy, but you lot go out and have a lot of fun. There's a massive difference.
I think Toronto, I'm 60-some years old, and I know of twice when the snow was so bad that the city kind of slowed down for a day or two. One was when we had Mayor Mel Lastman, I guess that's about 10 years ago, and one was when I was in my teens and going to high school, and it just all happened so fast that they had to kind of take a day to dig out. But it's traditionally, we're equipped for it. We know how to do it. We've got enough plows. Unlike Vancouver, where I've also lived, where they don't have as many plows and people don't have snow tires. And so when it snows in Vancouver and it's hilly, you could be sliding a lot. Whereas people do salting and sanding of the highways. There are fleets of graders ready to get rid of the snow very quickly. If you live on a small side street, it might take an extra day. People all have shovels and snow blowers, and there's kind of a camaraderie after a snowfall where all the neighbors are out with their snow blowers, and if you have an elderly person, they'll help them. And then there's snowball fights and all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
I mean, winter is actually fun. I find that, but it is an outdoors kind of fun. The alternative is that after skiing, you're sitting by the fire in a luxurious kind of resort living room, sipping the wine and feeling all warm and toasty after a day on the slopes. So I think we actually manage winter very well.
You have to come over and teach us how to do it, because we definitely need the help. You can keep up to date with travel news and leave me a message at facebook.com/John Guinn Travel Show. Ontario borders onto the USA. It's near the Great Lakes, so you've got Chicago as an alternative destination, or New York for Niagara Falls. Obviously, we're finding out why you should visit Ontario, and one of the reasons could be the difference in prices between the hotels in the American cities and Toronto. So that's what we're going to talk about now, and that's hotel prices.
Oh, I don't stay in hotels that often in Toronto, but I think they're part of, they're not as expensive, having just been to New York. I think that you'll find that, of course, we have all levels of hotel. So we have the Ritz-Carlton, Shangri-La, Four Seasons. They're all in the, shall we say, upper range. And then there's a lot of mid-range hotels. They're quite popular these days are hotels like the Thompson Hotel, which is a boutique hotel. I can go to Stratford, where I'm going at the end of the month, and I can get at the Arden Park Hotel a suite for about $200 a night. But next door at the Bruce Hotel, I can pay $650 a night. And the service is comparable. It's not, but the rooms are more luxurious, obviously, at the Bruce Hotel, and a bit larger and so on. So I think I would say, though, that compared to, and I've traveled a bit to the major cities of the world, Toronto is very affordable. We also have the advantage right now of the value of our dollar being about 70 cents to the American dollar, which is making us a very affordable destination yet again.
So when we travel from the UK, are there direct flights, and how long does it take to get from London to?
It's according to Air Canada, from Heathrow to Pearson, it's 6 hours and 55 minutes, so seven hours, and that's probably the flight time, not necessarily the go through and get your luggage kind of time. So it's not terrible, and I think there's a 6-hour time difference. WestJet flies out of Gatwick. Air Transit has a flight. Haven't checked WestJet, but it's very accessible, and we have many flights every day, I think, because actually, I don't know that I mentioned yet, but of our international visitor expenditures, excluding the United States, our top two markets are China and the United Kingdom. China represents 27% of our annual visitor expenditures at $915 million. And the United Kingdom is 23% at $788 million. And so we really feel that the airlift between England and Ontario is quite significant. And Pearson is arguably the largest airport hub in all of Canada as well. There's also a lot of people who use the Greater Toronto Airport Authority, or Pearson Airport, as sort of their link to other destinations. So a lot of Americans flying to Europe now find it more convenient and sometimes more affordable to fly from northeastern United States to Toronto to get their flight to London. So there's obviously a lot of visitors who are coming from even further away might do a two-nation vacation as well. Visit Toronto and New York City.
So 23% of your tourists are British. It's more than I expected, to be honest. That's quite high.
Well, that's visitor expenditure. I know that we get more than 25 million Canadian, American, and international visitors annually. Yeah, so 392,000 visits from the United Kingdom are projected by 20